Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back today again with another video. The subject of today's video is going to be on Derrick Rose, and I'm going to be breaking down some of the destinations that I think he could end up at, and some of the places that I think he probably shouldn't try to go for. Basically, just based on how he's playing this season and how I think he would do on the potential teams that he could go to. So first, I'm going to break down his statistics for this season. He's actually having a pretty good bounce back year from playing pretty poorly last year and really not that great even the year before that. So this year, he is sixth man of the year, or he's playing the sixth man role for the Timberwolves. Most people think he's like a consensus sixth man of the year pick. So this year he's averaging 18 points a game, shooting 48% from the field, 39% from three, which is by far the highest he's ever shot in his career. He's shooting 85% from the line, which is really good for him. He's getting 3 rebounds a game and 5 assists a game, 1 steal a game, 2 turnovers a game. So pretty good numbers as far as all of those for him. His per 36 numbers are actually pretty impressive. He's averaging 24 points a game with 4 rebounds and 6 assists a game. So he's actually, if you were playing like starters level minutes, which is what the point of that metric is for, he'd be averaging like 24 points a game, which is pretty good. So basically, what do I think, or what should Kyrie look for in a team that he wants to go to? Excuse me, Derrick Rose, not Kyrie. But that actually leads me into my first subject. I think a big market for him will be the Kyrie team, the teams that don't get Kyrie Irving, essentially. So looking at the market, you have the Knicks who want Kyrie, so Derrick Rose could be an option there. You actually have the Lakers who might want Kyrie, the Clippers might want Kyrie. Um, those are probably like the big ones, those three right there. You could also see, uh, I think the Celtics, obviously if Kyrie leaves, Derrick Rose could be a fill in for him there. The key here is that Derrick Rose keeps up his shooting percentage. That 39% from three, that's what's going to net him a good contract with a lot of these teams. And what do I think is a good contract for Derrick Rose, by the way? I think anywhere between 10 to 15 million is pretty reasonable. I think he's basically slightly below what D'Angelo Russell has been this season. D'Lo has been pretty good and a pretty productive player, making the All-Star team this year. I think basically Derrick Rose has given you what D'Angelo Russell has given you this year. It just so happens that D'Angelo Russell's in the East, so his team is going to be in the playoffs, so he made the All-Star team. It might also speak to the strength of players in each conference, but either way, um, so I think D'Angelo's probably going to make, in my opinion, probably around 20 a year in this next contract. But I think um, D- Derrick Derrick Rose 10 to 15 is pretty fair for him, I'd say. But that's definitely the first group I'd say is the we didn't get Kyrie teams, so it could potentially be the Celtics, as I said, the Lakers, the Knicks, the Clippers, and then even um, a few other teams who are kind of like dark horses. But those are the main teams I might look at him. I don't really think he fits well with many of those teams. I don't think many of them are like true contenders and would be great fits for him. I think if he went to the Celtics, they'd just be disappointed that he's not Kyrie and he wouldn't really live up to what they expected out of him. I think if he went to the Knicks, he isn't enough of a good player to make them that much better. I think he is best in a scenario where he's on like a really good playoff contending team and he just elevates them a little bit above what they already are. I don't think that he can be the second best player on a playoff team. I think he could be the fourth best player. Um, let's see here. Of course, an obvious one that I didn't really think to mention, but I can bring up really quick right now is he could re-sign with the Timberwolves. He's had his best season in years with them right now, and he has played really well with them. I don't really see him re-signing with them. I think that because they have Jeff Teague locked up for 18 or 19 million at the point guard position. Unless Derrick Rose is going to play a lot more shooting guard, I don't see uh, them re-signing him to like 15 million a year because they're already giving out lengthy big contracts to role players. Like Gorgie Jang is locked up for I think 2 more years at 15 million, which is a terrible contract in retrospect. And Towns and Wiggins both have their max contracts, so they don't have a ton of space to sign guys. And between Towns making I think 25 next year, Wiggins is going to make like 27 next year. So that right there is like 52. Then Teague is making 19, so that's 71. And then Gorgie Jang is making 15, so that's 86. So that's 86 million between four guys. And then you're also having to fill out the rest of a 15-man roster. So I just don't really think there's space for Derrick Rose to re-sign with the team unless he's willing to sign for like 5 million. But if he's wanting to demand more like 15 million, I don't see him re-signing with the Timberwolves. But he has been a really good fit for them this year, I'd say. Okay, so moving on, I'm gonna I think talk about the teams that are really true contenders. And so I've basically broken it down to about four teams in my opinion. And so the first thing I'm going to start with are the obvious ones that need a lot of point guard help. Which so number one would be the Orlando Magic. So I think Orlando could definitely use Derrick Rose. I think the major reason that they wouldn't sign him is because they already have bad defense, and he wouldn't really help them at all on the defensive side of the ball. I think, although he is a really talented player, they already have really offensively gifted players such as Aaron Gordon, Evan Fournier. If they retain Nikola Vucevic, they won't really need that much offensive punch besides those three. So then Derrick Rose really isn't a necessity for them to have a good uh, wing scorer because actually each of those guys can shoot it pretty decent from the outside. But again, they really do need a point guard who's NBA starter quality. So I think from that perspective, they would go after Derrick Rose, especially if Markelle Fultz continues to really not impress maybe during the off-season workouts, then they would possibly bring him in. So I think they're definitely a contender, mainly from the aspect that they don't really have an NBA starting caliber point guard. Not that they necessarily need Derrick Rose. That may seem a little bit confusing, but my point being that they don't need him necessarily. They just need somebody to start a point guard for them who's not DJ Augustine or Markelle Fultz, because neither of those guys are really up to snuff to be starters in the NBA at this point in their respective careers. So the next team I have on here would be the Phoenix Suns. Similar to Orlando actually, in that they really just don't have a starting caliber NBA point guard. Basically, they have Tyler Johnson running the point since that trade with the Heat. They actually had Devin Booker running point for a decent chunk of the season, along with Jamal Crawford actually doing some of it as well. So they just really haven't had a point guard this season, like a pure point guard. So from that perspective, I think they could really use Derrick Rose. But in another sense, I think Derrick Rose is a guy who in the past has struggled to play off ball and has really only ever been successful when he plays with the ball always in his hands, and he's mainly been effective when it's just like Derrick Rose gets the ball and is able to do whatever he wants with it. That's actually to an extent how he's been playing in Minnesota this season. You know, he plays a lot of point guard, but he has under 5 assists a game. At 4.6, that's a little bit uh, underwhelming, I might say. Now, even as in his best seasons, he only averaged 7.7 assists per game, which is all right for a point guard. So he's never been a huge passer, but still, he's become basically a shooting guard in a point guard's body, I'd say, and a ball dominant one at that. He's basically, it's hard to describe, but to me, he sort of is a little bit like Buddy Hield with a worse stroke in that. Actually, that's not a great comparison, but he's just a shooting guard basically in a point guard's body, and they still trot him out at point sometimes. Like sort of like a Donovan Mitchell is who he really reminds me of actually. Donovan Mitchell with a less explosivity and more of a jump shot. That's who he really reminds me of in a smaller body. So I don't really see him filling a point guard void that well if they're looking for like a playmaker. But I mean, he is obviously a better option than like Tyler Johnson, and he could elevate this team to better than the worst record in the league, which they're currently at right now. So he is an option there. Going forward, some of the other places I thought he could go, one that stuck out to me was definitely Utah, especially if they lose Ricky Rubio. They're going to be looking to fill a point guard slot, and I think they're a team that's good enough defensively that they could afford to have him in there at point guard, sort of a downgrade defensively at point guard, but definitely an upgrade. And the Jazz are a team that I think really need a solid second option as far as point guard, or as far as offensive threat. So they have Donovan Mitchell who can create his own offense, but if he comes out of the game, they don't have anyone who can really score off the dribble or create their own offense. I think Derrick Rose would be great from that aspect. I just reiterated that he's a lot like Donovan Mitchell in certain ways to me. I do think that is true, and while you don't want to have a duplicate, they aren't They aren't that similar in some of the ways that they play, actually, in that Derrick Rose can shoot from three a lot better than Mitchell can, and so you could space the floor a little bit better. Yes, both of them need the ball in their hands to be effective, but you could work around that by staggering minutes and encouraging D Rose to work on his 3-point shooting a lot more and become more of a spot up shooter and just try to play a little bit more off ball. Again, the 3-point shooting is going to be critical to Derrick Rose's success on any of these teams that he could potentially go to. But yeah, I think that that could be a definite upgrade for the Jazz, and they could return to being like a second round caliber team in the West with him. I think he'd be a definite upgrade over Rubio at point guard. Next, I have a team that it would sort of be a consolation prize to get Derrick Rose, but who I actually think would work really well with this team, just how it's currently constructed, would be the Los Angeles Lakers. If the Lakers let Rondo go and they let KCP go, that'll clear up enough space to assign Derrick Rose to a pretty reasonable contract, in my opinion, and I think that he would be a pretty good option for them to go after. So, like some of the other teams, like the Jazz, where I was a bit apprehensive about him playing with a ball dominant guy like in Donovan Mitchell, I'd also be apprehensive about him playing with a ball dominant guy in LeBron. But I think the 39% 3-point shooting is very, very promising for him to play with the Lakers. I think he would actually be a really good six man for them. And like you could play him alongside Lonzo and have them sort of have an indistinguished two guards out there, not necessarily a point guard and a shooting guard, just two guards out there. Lonzo would probably bring the ball up more often, but Derrick Rose could definitely handle the ball a ton too. He could also take playmaking pressures off of LeBron, although Lonzo can do some of that too. But Derrick Rose is just a guy who can create off the dribble for himself. I think much better than Kuzma or even Ingram can really at this point. They're both good players, but I think Derrick Rose is a more complete package of skills at this point, in that he has a 3-point shot, and although those guys are younger, I think Derrick Rose actually still has a little bit more bounce to his game, in that if you watch a lot of his highlights, you'll see like the way he attacks the rim and can contort his body is a lot more um, controlled and diverse than how Kuzma and Ingram go at the rim. So I think he could be a good offensive threat from that point. He doesn't help this team on defense, but I think he could be a very underrated signing for them if they whiff on some other names that they'd be going after. The last team I have on here who could be a contender and could go after him and would actually be a decent fit, I thought would be the Indiana Pacers. So they have quite a few free agents. Included would be starting point guard Darren Collison during this offseason, and I think Derrick Rose could slot in next to Victor Oladipo and be a good fit. So they're sort of in a similar scenario to the Jazz, in my opinion, a good defensive team that lacks a solidified second option on offense, and Derrick Rose could be that for them. They have Miles Turner and Sabonis and Bogdanovich and Collison, but none of those guys are really, like, in my opinion, a solid second option like during the playoffs who you can count on. And I think Derrick Rose could be that if he could remain healthy. And so I like him potentially going to Indiana as well. That's really it, guys. Let me know what you think, where you think that Derrick Rose maybe should go, or what you think of my selections for where he might be able to go. To reiterate, some of the places I chose included Indiana, Los Angeles, Utah, Phoenix, and Orlando. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.